Hi, everyone. This is Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yakker. Today's show is part two of my interview with Ken Goudsward, author of Fermi's Paradox is BS, the evidence for extraterrestrial life. What role, Ken, has organized religion played in formulating our understanding of our existence and role in the universe? And why are they so adamant about having their parishioners not believe or even question the possibility of the existence of other beings or life forms other than those here on Earth?
Well, that's a really good question. I think you're kind of hitting the nail on the head there. What is our role in the universe? If you believe what the Sumerian myths are telling us, then our role is one of a myriad of species on a myriad of planets, and we play a very small role, although it is instrumental in the company of Enki and Marduk and their plans, which actually ties in pretty importantly because Marduk, at one point in the story, there's this idea that Marduk is going to become like the emperor. They actually call him ruler of the entire universe at one point. I think it's wishful thinking on the part of his backers. It sounds like this is in the middle of, yet again, there's more politics involved, which of course, where is there ever intelligent beings who don't have politics? Even if you look at apes and even monkeys and other dogs, wolves, elephants, there are a lot of mammals that are some of the more intelligent ones for which the social factor is a huge thing. There is always who's going to be leader, who's the bottom man on. These are questions that we can't get away from. And so humanity is ultimately a political being. It's interesting to me that religion chooses to essentially just ignore the question because they say that one of their purported purposes is to provide us with an understanding of our place in the universe, and yet they ignore everything in the universe except us and one other person. That's God. How does that give an accurate reflection of our place in the universe? It doesn't. Perhaps that is a paradox that needs more digging into.
Why are so many governments throughout the world afraid of their citizens knowing the truth about visitations to our planet by alien beings from other galaxies?
I don't really see myself as much of a conspiracy theorist, but you almost have to when it comes to these ideas and these questions. So it's probably the simplest answer is that the same people who created the religions are still controlling the governments. We like to think that there's a division between church and state, but is there really? I question that. There's really the ethics of the state and the morality of the church really go hand in hand. Can't separate one from the other.
You ask in your book, has all of Earth's biological material, DNA, and even life itself been injected to Earth from comets as proposed by a number of scholars such as Fred Hoyle? You state that in your opinion, this is certainly plausible. What are your reasons for saying that?
We've already sort of briefly talked about the fact that those elements and those building blocks of life are out there. They are in space. So we know that. What we don't know is where those came from here on Earth. If we limit the discussion to simply only on Earth and pretend that we haven't found any of those things out in space, that basically puts us into kind of the scenario that we were in about 50 years ago. That was essentially the status quo. We did not really know about this stuff in space, and anybody who did talk about life from space was either labeled a lunatic or it's just mythology. I mean, even though the Sumerians have, told us thousands of years ago, yeah, but it's just a myth. If you like ignoring data, go ahead, keep doing that. And really, that's the status quo for all of academic studies, really. Science is part of it, but it's not even just scientists that are doing it. Everybody is ignoring this whole field. Even anthropologists it's a strange thing because an anthropologist is all about the stories. It's all about the culture. If I'm an anthropologist, the only thing that I really care about studying is culture, and that includes story and that includes myth. And yet they treat them as though they're untrue. Why would you do that? Why would you assume that all the stuff that people that you're studying are writing down are essentially lies? Because I mean, if it's not true, it's a lie, right? I don't buy that. I treat any kind of, if it was important enough to to write down at some point. And if it was important enough to have an oral tradition going back thousands of years and to keep that oral tradition alive, that's far more important than any of the stories that we're telling ourselves today. How can that not be considered at least partly truthful? I want to come back around another very important part of it. There's all the religion and all the cultural kind of stuff, but even the biology itself, if you limit the discussion to biology here on Earth, the theory of evolution, and I'm not trying to say that evolution is fake or false or anything like that. What I will say is that evolution does not really even handle the question of how life began. Evolution is about what happened to life and how life has changed over long periods. And absolutely, that's totally true. That happens. The question of where that life began is out of scope for the theory of evolution. Let's talk about Francis Crick. Francis Crick is one of the most important biologists and biochemists in our history. What he did was, him and a colleague essentially were the two guys who are credited. Maybe other people were involved as well, but these guys got the credit with essentially figuring out how DNA works. So not to say that they invented DNA, they certainly didn't invent it. You could say that they discovered DNA, even that might be a little bit misleading, but basically they were the guys who really essentially wrote the book on what DNA is and how it works. Francis Crick is not a guy who doesn't understand how biology works. And Francis Crick said that, in his opinion, there is zero chance that life began on Earth. There is no way that we went from nothing through some kind of magical or mysterious process that we have no indications of, no evidence for, but we assume must have happened because now there's life. So his opinion was that did not happen on Earth. That happened somewhere else, somewhere long before life appeared on Earth, and then that life somehow came to Earth.
You also write in your book that, in your opinion, ufology is a field that can be studied scientifically. How so?
That's more of the kind of a topic of my other book that just came out that I co-authored with Barbara DeLong. We examine the UFO data. We're basically excluding the modern period after Roswell because there's too much data. I cannot wrap my head around the thousands of reports every year. In Canada alone, we get over 1,000 reports per year. I don't know what the exact numbers are for the United States, but I would warrant that it's a lot higher simply because the population is so much bigger. And all over the world, there are these similar types of things are happening where there are people seeing things that they think are strange enough to bother somebody with. Of course, not all of them are what I would consider a UFO, because to me, the word U, the unidentified part of it, is maybe not a lot of due diligence is done a lot of the times. If you see a light in the sky, could very well be a star. Depends on how it's moving. A lot of people will just say, oh, that's a light, it must be a UFO. And so I think that the number of reported cases is staggeringly higher than it should be. But nevertheless, if you limit it to more of the close encounters types, which that sort of rules out, oh, there's just a light, because a close encounter has to be, by definition, something that is close. And if it's close, it can't be just a point of light. It has to be some kind of shape and definition and movement to it. These are the cases have examined. And what we've done is we went from the earliest mists of time up until 1947, and we cut it off just before the Roswell incident. And after that, there's just so many cases. Again, a lot of people are focusing on the modern period. So what we did was we listed 364 cases going back from the latest ones being 1947, of which there's maybe a dozen in that year, a few dozen in the years immediately previous. We keep going back and we're finding examples during the World War II period, during World War I, during the pre-war years, in the earliest around the turn of the century, in the 1900s, in the 1800s, 1700s, 15s, back through through the medieval period, the Renaissance, the Middle Ages, the classical period, and the Roman Empire, and even before that, and looking at all of these records that Barbara and her late husband have been collecting for many years. Then what we did was we analyzed the actual reports. When somebody said, hey, I saw a weird thing in the sky, well, what did it look like? What shape was it? What color was it? How did it move? We tried to tease out these questions. Of course, we're not able to ask the witnesses these questions directly because they've been long dead. Based on what they did tell us and what has been written down, in many of these cases, they already are answering the questions that we would want to ask. What we did was we took their answers, we put them into a spreadsheet, kind of analyzed what are the different types of answers that we're getting. Here's where things are very strange. Actually, not strange. Strange is the opposite of what I'm saying. They are not strange at all. They're very consistent and they're very reasonable. The people are answering the question with very believable answers. For example, what shape is it? Most of the time it's round. A lot of the times it's saucer shaped, spheroid. And then you've got sort of egg shaped or cigar shaped or the Tic Tacs. So you've got round and then you've got sort of a cigar shaped and like everything in between. Occasionally there's a triangle. Occasionally there's like a cross shape or an X or something. But through all of this material dating over like about a 10,000 year period, the answers are remarkably consistent. What we did not find was a wide variance of what people are seeing. What we did find is a small variance. This variance occurs in the shape as well as the color and several other attributes. By analyzing these data, what we found is a consistent phenomenon. There is a range, but it's a predictable range. After having analyzed the data, if somebody came up to me tomorrow and said, hey, I saw a UFO, I would say, wait, let me guess. Give me 5 guesses and I can guess what shape it is.
What, Ken, would you like to see as the next chapter in the UFO phenomena and the search for contacting and communicating with alien life forms, as well as learning about our own beginnings?
I don't really know, because on the one hand, there are many people who already have seen and have already come to the conclusion of we're not alone. Whether the governments of the world accept that or not, I don't know if it matters. In the big picture, if there actually is other worlds all around us and we're this one minute speck of dust, then what we think here on this little speck of dust doesn't really matter. However, I think in terms of humanity and what kind of value could there be for humanity, I think that right now being in this state where we're cut off from our neighbors is very sad. I liken it to, again, I'll use Star Wars as an analogy. If Luke Skywalker is a young boy growing up on Tatooine, he lives with his uncle Owen. Just imagine this. Instead of Luke saying, hey, I'm going down to the spaceport to pick up some parts for my, whatever it was, he was supposed to meet his friends in the spaceport. What if Uncle Owen had made a decision, and we actually see this later on in the Star Wars franchise, I can't remember which one of the sequels it's in. Again, there's a kid on a planet. So what if Uncle Owen had said to himself, we need to protect this kid, we need to shield him from all the evils in the universe, and we need to not let him see what's happening? It would have been very easy for them to not let Luke know about the spaceport. Of course, you can only keep up the charade for so long. What if he had been like our parenting examples of with the Easter Bunny and with Santa Claus? What if he had decided that it's better that Luke doesn't know that there are spaceports and that there are other planets and that there is a big evil empire? And whether you call it evil or not, it's interesting that there are other races, other species, other types of people who are, again, they're not just evil. Like all the guys in the bar at Mos Eisley, sure, there was some seedy characters, but you wouldn't want to say that their lives have no value. I kind of think that that's where we're at right now, is that our parents, whoever they are, have started this fairy tale for us that says that there is no spaceport and there's nothing beyond us. Just keep your eyes down. Don't look up. Just ignore all the signs that are already here. This is really the only way to explain the type of bullying and humiliation that UFO encounterees UFOs and abductees especially have been living under for the bulk of their lives. I've talked to several people who have had encounters years ago, and sometimes I'm the first person that they're able to talk to about it. They're basically living in denial and they're afraid to talk about it. Now, that culture is starting to shift, which is extremely good. And so I think if there was a hope that I had, it's that cultural shift would continue, that there would be more openness. That really needs to happen from the scientific community more than anything. I don't really give a rip what the government says or what they think they know. If science continues to deny these facts that I think are becoming quite hard to deny, and that's sort of what Fermi's Paradox book is about. But beyond that, if they continue to do this, we will continue to have this culture of humiliation. At best, right now, you won't get beat up anymore for having seen a UFO, but you'll still be called a flake or a quack, or it's still pseudoscience. Like most of the books that I'm writing, I know somebody's calling them pseudoscience. Well, I'm a scientist and I'm using scientific methods. And so people who will simply want to come and refute or debunk, if they're going to do that, I welcome it. But they also better be using the scientific method rather than just coming at me or other people who are in this field and saying, oh, it's just crazy people. That's not science-based. If there's evidence that you can prove, that you can show me how I've reached the wrong conclusion, I would like to hear that because I'm very evidence-based. There's this real hypocrisy when it comes to this whole concept of pseudoscience, because you don't have to prove anything is pseudoscience. You don't need a shred of evidence whatsoever. It just has to be something that you personally disagree with. That, for me, would be the one thing that I would love to see change. I think there is hope for it.
Should viewers of Paranormal Yacker want to buy Fermi's Paradox is BS and also learn about the other books you've written, how can they do that?
You can go to my website, which is dimensionfold.com, or you can just go straight to Amazon and search for Fermi's Paradox is bullshit. You actually have to call it the actual word. Unfortunately, I realized after the fact that Amazon won't let me run ads because they have a very moralistic high ground in terms of content that they allowed in ads. I'm sort of having some second thoughts about the title of the book. It is what it is, at least for now. You can search on Amazon or go to my website, dimensionfold.com. If you go there, you'll actually find a lot of other goodies because that will link to my YouTube channel as well as my Substack newsletter, which I'm going to be starting to produce more articles around some of these other topics and questions. And some of it will be snippets from some of my books, and some of it will be probably snippets and questions on other ideas I'm developing or starting to look into.
Ken Goudsward, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yacker. It was great yakking with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. It was great to be here.
Hi, everyone. This is Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yacker. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. To be sure, you're amongst the first to receive new interviews when they're released and to have access to previous ones, subscribe to my free YouTube channel. To do that, all you have to do is press the subscribe button on your screen.